Hello everyone, this is Mr. Mohammed Hussein from Arloon International School, Grade 10 Algebra teacher. Welcome to week 14, chapter 13, lesson 5, the cosine function. Here are the objectives of the lesson: to graph and write the cosine function, to graph and write the cosine function, to solve trigonometric equations. As you know, the cosine function y is equals to cos theta matches theta with the x coordinates of the point on the unit circle where the terminal side of an angle intersects the unit circle. The symmetry of the set of points xy is equal to cos theta and sin theta on the unit circle, guaranteed that the graph of sine and the cosine are congruent translation of each other. In the coordinate xy, cos theta is x coordinate and sin theta is y coordinate. Now let us see the graph of y is equals to cos x, or y is equals to cos theta. As you can see, the graph of cosine function starts on the y-axis at point 1, unlike sine function starts at 0, and it's passing through pi over 2, and then going down and coming back, and then intersect the x-axis at 3 pi over 2, and going up and down again intersect the x-axis at 5 pi over 2, and so on. Pi over 2 is 90 degrees and 3 pi over 2 is 270 degrees, 5 pi over 2 is 450, and so on. And if you want to move to the left side, you will keep the same pattern. The period of the cosine function is the same as the period of sine function, which is 2 pi. It is the distance between two peaks, two consecutive peaks, between this one and this one, or between this one and this one. Or if you want, you can take from the negative side, between this one and this one, or this and this one. The amplitude is the distance, the maximum for the top is 1. If you go down again, is 1. So the amplitude is the same formula as the sine function, which means half times maximum value, which is 1, minus minimum value, which is -1. Or simply you can add half times 1 plus 1, ignoring the negative side. If you want to ignore the negative side, you can use amplitude as 1 over 2 times the maximum value 1 plus the minimum value 1. This graph shows simply you can draw the cosine function using the degree measures. In the previous slide you have seen that you can draw cosine function using the radian measures. Here in degrees it is the same. This 0 degree implies at this point, and this is 90, and this point is 180, this is 270, this is 360, and so on. Same thing to the left side. So it's possible to use either radian measure or degree measure to draw both sine function or cosine function. Now let us see some key concepts, summary, property of cosine functions. Suppose y is equals to a times cos b times theta, with a is different from 0 and theta is greater than 0, and theta is in radians. I'll repeat again, y is equals to a times cos b theta. A and the b stands for numbers with these restrictions. A must be different from 0. If a is 0, this will be turned into y is equals to 0. So a must be different from 0, and theta must be greater than 0. The amplitude of the function is absolute value of a, which means absolute value of a number comes here, either it's negative or positive. B is the number of cycles in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. B is the number of cycles in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. And 2 pi divided by B is the period of the function. If A is greater than 0, use max 0 min 0 max pattern. If A is less than 0, use min 0 max 0 min pattern. Now let us see some examples. Problem number 1. A. What are the domain, period, range, and amplitude of the cosine function of the form y is equals to cos theta, where A equal to B and equal to 1, which means A is 1 and B is also 1. Of course, the domain is all real numbers, and the graph covers all x values to the left and to the right, including 0. The range is between -1 and 1. Range is the y value. The maximum value of the graph is 1, and the minimum value is -1. So the range lies between 1 maximum point and minimum -1. Amplitude is absolute value of A. Of course, you can take simply absolute value of 1, or 1 over 2 times max minus minimum, which is equals to 1 over 2 times 1 minus -1, because here the minimum is -1, which is equals to 1 over 2 times 1 plus 1, as minus minus will turn into positive or plus, which is equals to 1. And the period is 2 pi divided by B. In our case now, B is 1, so 2 pi divided by 1, which is equals to 2 pi. Example number 1, part B. What are the domain, period, range, and amplitude of the cosine function of the form y is equals to a cos theta, where A is different from 0 and A is different from 1, but B equals 1. The domain is equal to all real numbers, as the graph covers all positive and negative values of x, and the range lies between -a and a, whatever numbers comes here. Let's say 2, so from -2 up to 2. Amplitude, you can take the absolute value of a or use the formula 1 over 2 times maximum minus minimum, which is equals to 1 over 2 times a minus a, which is equals to 1 over 2a plus a, which equals 1 over 2 times 2a, and simplifying 2 by 2, it will give you a. Or simply you can take from the beginning the absolute value of a. The period 2 pi divided by b, which is equals to 2 pi divided by 1. In our case, b is 1. It's given b is 1, so it's 2 pi is 3. For example number 1, part C. What are the domain, period, range, and amplitude of the cosine function of the form y is equals to 3 cos 6 theta? Now a is different from 1, b is also different from 1. The domain is still all real numbers. You can say the domain of all kinds of cosine function is real number. The range is equal to between -3 and 3, which means -3 less than or equal to y is less than or equal to 3. Amplitude, absolute value of 3, which is equals to 1 over 2 times max minus minimum, 1 over 2 times 3 minus 3, as minimum is -3, 1 over 2 times 3 plus 3, which is equals to 1 over 2 times 3, which is 6, or it is 3. The period equals 2 pi divided by b, which is equal to 2 pi divided by 6. In our case, b is 6 now, so 2 pi over 6, which equals to pi over 3. Example number 2. Examine the cycle of the cosine function in the interval from 0 to 2 pi, where in the cycle that the maximum value and the minimum value occur. Where do the zeros or x-intercepts occur? By the way, the zeros means x-intercepts. Alright, the graph of y is equal to cos theta has an infinite number of x-intercepts. That means when y is equal to 0, theta can be 90, which is pi over 2, or 270, which is equal to 3 pi over 2, or 450, which is equal to 5 pi over 2 extra, because for these values of theta, cos of theta will give you 0. Look at this graph. This is the zeros of the cosine function, pi over 2, 90, 3 pi over 2, 270, and next 450, and so on. To the left, the same thing, negative. You can take negative of this, negative 90 here, and negative 3 pi over 2, and so on. So there are an infinite number of x-intercepts or zeros. In general, x-intercept of the graph y is equal to cos theta is at n pi over 2, n pi over 2, where n runs from like n is equal to 1, 3, 5 extra, or taking odds, multiplying by pi over 2. The first one is 1 times pi over 2, it's pi over 2. The second one is 3 times pi over 2, which is 3 pi over 2, and so on. You can take plus or minus of n. You can take plus or minus of n. And the maximum value at 0, because when x is 0, it is 1, and even when it's 2 pi, it's 1, and so on if you continue. But our interval is between 0 and 2 pi. Our interval is given between 0 and 2 pi. So the maximum of the graph will be obtained at 0 and at 2 pi, because the graph attains value 1 at the 2. The minimum value at pi, which means the graph will attain the minimum value at pi, which is negative 1, only between 0 and 2 pi. If you continue, of course there are other points where the graph can attain the minimum value. Problem number 3, or example number 3, sketch the graph of y is equal to 2.5 times cos 2 theta. Y is equal to 2.5 cos 2 theta. Of course, we need to find important facts like amplitude, period, and the intervals to sketch the graph. First, amplitude will be the absolute value of A, which is absolute value of 2.5, it's 2.5. And the period, 2 pi over B, which is 2 pi divided by 2, because B is 2, and it will give you pi. Divide the period of the fours, which means after you know the period, try to divide into fours. If you divide this by 4, you will obtain different kinds of intervals. Pi divided by 4 is pi over 4, so each interval will take pi over 4 in addition to the previous one. The first interval is from 0 to 2 pi over 4, and second interval will be pi over 4 plus pi over 4, it will be pi over 2, so the interval will be from pi over 4 to pi over 2. And third interval will be pi over 2 plus pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 4, and the interval will be pi over 2 to 3 pi over 4. Fourth interval equals 3 pi over 4 plus pi over 4, which is pi. Again, the interval will be 3 pi over 4 to pi. Then in the fourth step, you can sketch the graph using the above informations. Using the above informations, you can draw your graph by using those informations. First one is amplitude, is 2.5, and down it's negative 2.5 here. Its amplitude is 2.5. Then you can arrange your intervals. We have seen that the intervals are between 0 to pi over 4, pi over 4 to pi over 2, pi over 2 to 3 pi over 4, and 3 pi over 4 to pi. Since the period is pi, the period is pi. Then use maximum 0 minimum, 0 maximum pattern, as the a value is positive. When a is positive, always use maximum, 0 minimum, 0 maximum, 0 pattern. So just by drawing a line through power 4 and going down until negative 2.5 and then coming back and passing through 3 power 4 and so on. This is the graph of y is equals to 2.5 to theta. Example number 4 is application of real life. Suppose the water level varies from low tide to high tide by 80 inches between low tide at 10:30 a.m. and high tide at 1:40 p.m. What is the cosine function that models the variation in inches above and below the average water level as a function of the number of hours since 10:30 a.m.? This question is about the tides on the ocean, which can be applied in daily or real life. So we are going to write the function which models this question. The difference between the low tide and high tide is 80 inches, means the amplitude is 1/2 times 80, which is 40. The amplitude is 40. The time difference from 10:30 a.m. to 1:40 p.m. is about 3 hours and 10 minutes. The time between 10:30 a.m. to 1:40 p.m. is 3 hours and 10 minutes. This is just to take halfway of the cycle. If halfway cycle is 3 hours and 10 minutes, then the full cycle is times 2, which is 6 and 20 minutes. Or you can change this total into hours. It is 6 and 1/3 hours, which is equals to period. This is the period. So period equals 2 pi over b. To find b, you can use b equals 6 pi over 19 and crisscross. You can crisscross here and simplify. You will obtain b is equals 6 pi over 19. Since the tide is always starts inside the ocean down negative 40 at time 0, the equation will be f of t equal to negative 40. Instead of positive, you should take negative, because the tide starts from down inside the water body. Cos b is 6 pi over 19. So this equation models the above question. Thank you for watching this video, and dear students, please don't forget to practice your questions or exercise from textbook and workbook, all related to this lesson. Have a good time.